I belong to the congregation of the Montfort Missionaries, and that the charism is to establish the kingdom of God through the queenship of Mary. And that Montfort said, we go to Jesus, we go to God through Mary. But if a Christian finds it difficult to go to Mary to go to God through Mary, he or she can go straight away. But Montfort said he would question the faith of that person. Now, my question is, Mary appeared in 1917 in Fatima, and after that, Mary seems to appear in different places. For example, Medjugorje started since 1981, giving messages up to now. I don't know whether this group made some research. I mean, to go to Medjugorje. Of course, the church has not yet approved these operations. Whether the messages given by Mary to those the people in Medjugorje would be the same as these messages we get from Fatima. Thank you.
It's precisely because the church has not approved the apparitions of Medjugorje that I don't address them. There is also apparitions in many other places. In fact, according to some official of the Holy Office, Our Lady's appeared every day of the year since 1830 to the present time. She certainly, she has a great love, and a love that we cannot fully comprehend because it's so great. But she has a love for us, and she sees us in danger, and it makes a lot of sense that she would be appearing in many places and telling people what they must do. And certainly on a personal basis, and I think that the message of Fatima, for example, gives us, the consequences on a personal basis. If we live according to God's law, the children had the foretaste of heaven, and they accepted to be sacrificed themselves for the conversion of sinners and for Our Lady's wishes. On the other hand, if we don't, or they show them the vision of hell of July 13th, in which we see people who weren't reflecting, who weren't doing enough, who fell into hell. And so on a personal basis, I'm sure her message is always the same, that is to keep God's commandments, receive the sacraments, pray. As St. Alphonsus tells us, he who prays will be saved, he who does not pray will be lost. That is, if we don't pray, we won't get the graces we need. If we don't get the graces we need, we won't be good. We will fall into sin. So we must pray, we must receive the sacraments worthily, and we must keep God's law. We must keep the faith. As St. Athanasius tells us that, quicumque vult salvus esse, whoever wishes to be saved before all good works must first of all hold on to the faith whole and entire. That's in the Athanasian Creed. And so when Pope John Paul II is telling us that can the Blessed Virgin, when she sees us in danger, can she remain silent? When she sees the very basis of her children's salvation in her mind, and he answers his own question, no, she cannot remain silent. But what is the basis he's talking about? Well, the first basis she's talking about is the faith. So when Our Lady at Fatima talks about the dogma of the faith always being preserved in Portugal, implying clearly that it won't be preserved elsewhere, the first thing you must be on your guard for, and St. Athanasius tells us, is to hold on to the Catholic faith, whole and entire. So now that's why there are other apparitions. There are people who accuse Medjugorje, for example, of preaching heresy, in which case then they should avoid Medjugorje. Now, I am not an expert on this subject, but I've read writers on both sides, and when they tell us that the apparition of Medjugorje tells us that it doesn't matter what religion you belong to, then that cannot be Catholic. And as such, maybe that's a false reporting of what was said there. Maybe, on another occasion, I'm told that the devil appeared and then transformed himself into the Blessed Virgin, and the Blessed Virgin, the same person, apologized for the devil's presence. But that's a clear sign that that apparition was not of God. However, the dogmatic theology is more certain, which is, if the devil tells you something contrary to the faith, you don't need the church to intervene. You already know it's not of God. Now, there may be I have a very very orthodox theologian in the mid-'80s telling me that there are people over there were taking too much influence, that they were good sources at the beginning. I just know that with Fatima I have more than enough work, and I've stayed purposely away from any unapproved apparitions so that I don't get, first of all, misrepresenting, oh, you got that from this place, you got, no. Everything I'm saying comes from Fatima, as far as I mean, or my Catholic theological training. It doesn't come from, or facts that you can verify for yourself as far as you can believe the newspapers or history books. That's what I've stayed with. So, but at the same time, Our Lady certainly has a great love for us, and she wants us, and certainly if, I mean, there are certainly other apparitions. I know Our Lady approved at Bano and Borang. She's also appeared, of course, at Lourdes, but nothing has the comparison, in my understanding. I love some other Marian sanctuaries besides Fatima, maybe even more, for their beauty and their devotion. But the message of Fatima, there's nothing that compares to it, because, first of all, only there does she promise world peace, when we obey her commands given at Fatima. Only there does she, is the miracle of the sun before 70,000 people for our time. Only there do we have a message which every other message, for example, there's an apparition in the Ukraine, for example, in which talks about, without mentioning Fatima, talks about the conversion of Russia in some future time, which points to the consecration. But I think the same thing, Garabandal talks about that. Now, I've had a bishop from Hiroshima telling me he believes in it, but it's not been approved. You've got Garabandal talking about an event taking place in which the great miracle will take place, and sometime which coincides with a thing that has never taken place in the lifetime of Conchita, for example. I think that'll be the consecration of Russia. All roads on these messages lead back to Fatima, and without Fatima, if we despise or push it aside, I think we don't have the solution without Fatima. And that's why I go that way.